Hey everybody, I'm going to do a milk and orange braised pork for the pork torta, but I'm also going to split the recipe in two. So I'm going to do some skinless bone-in chicken thighs also. So I am going to brown each of these, and I'm going to cook them separately. I'm just going to kind of split the ingredients in half. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to brown them in a separate pan, and then I'm going to transfer them to my braising pans, and then I'll deglaze this with some water and make sure I get all that fond that's going to be created while I'm sauteing these to get some nice color. Okay, so I'm browning my thighs. I want to get some nice color on them. And while I'm doing that, I'm going to go ahead and add some oil to two of these pans. Now you can always do it in one pan and then take the meat out, and that's fine too. So I'm going to go ahead and split up my onions. Just a little bit. And I have one whole onion. Large onion sliced very thin. Two garlic cloves that are sliced. Again, I'm just going to split these up so I can do some pork and some chicken. Okay. I want a little bit of color on these onions and garlic. Now, I have about 10 cilantro stems that I cut, and I just mince them really fine, and I'm going to put those in there to give it some flavor, okay, because that still has a lot of flavor, and you can eat those. Bay leaf. Okay, we're going to turn our chicken, some nice color on our chicken. If you want, you can use skin-on thighs as well. Okay, so we want to brown those on both sides. Now, the other ingredient we have is 1 tablespoon of orange zest, about 3 to 4 ounces of fresh orange juice. If you have bottled and you don't have fresh, you can use fresh, and if you don't have zest, you can use extra orange juice. 2 cups of milk. I'm going to add 1 cup of water or stock. You can use either one. And then I have 1 teaspoon of chipotle powder, 1 teaspoon of cumin, chili powder. And I'm just using a regular chili powder. You can use like a guajillo chili powder. You can use different chili powders. I'm also using 1 teaspoon of smoked paprika. You don't have to use that. And 1 teaspoon of crushed coriander seed. So I've mixed all those together. I'm going to go ahead and add my spices. Just let those cook with the onions a little bit. Kind of bring out some of the flavor of those spices. Okay, so I just deglazed my pan. I took my chicken thighs out. I deglazed my pan with the water. I'm going to add that to my onions, and then I'm going to add the milk. About half of the milk. Orange zest. And then we're going to add our chicken thighs to this. Now, what's going to happen is that the milk is it'll curdle a little bit. Don't worry. I'm gonna cover this. We're gonna cook that covered in a 350-degree oven for about 45 minutes, and then I'm gonna take the lid off, and I'm gonna finish it the rest of the way without the cover, so that milk can evaporate and the sugars in the milk can caramelize at the bottom. Okay. Okay, so now I'm browning my pork. I heated my pan, added the oil, and now, and this is pork shoulder. And you know, the only thing I find right now is pork shoulder slices. So, you know, they were about a 3/4 of an inch thick. Still has the blade bone in, and that's fine. And I just cut them into about, you know, 2-inch pieces. Normally you want to cut them into like 1.5, 2-inch pieces and brown them. And I'm going to brown them, flip them, brown the other side, then I'll add a little bit more oil and I'll brown the second batch. Okay, so I've browned my pork. Alright, so we got some nice color. And then now, with the water, I'm going to deglaze the pan. And we're going to scrape that with a rubber spatula. Don't use your tongs or a metal spoon to scrape it. Even though it is stainless, you still can scratch it. Alright. All that's going to go in our pork. Okay. Now, the orange juice, I split that up between these two pots as well. So we're going to bring this to a boil. And then we're going to cover this, and like I said, 45 minutes covered. Then I'm going to take off the lids, and I'm going to finish that uncovered in the oven. And here is the chicken. You can see how the milk is starting to curdle, and that's fine. Okay, so we're going to put that in the oven. I'll be back in 45 minutes. Okay, so it's been about 45 minutes, and I'm going to remove the lid from the chicken, and you can see that, you can see how that milk has kind of separated, and we're going to put that back in the oven now for probably another 30 to 40 minutes. I'll give it a little bit of a stir, make sure nothing's sticking to the bottom, and then once the chicken is tender, I'm going to take it out. If there's still more liquid left, I'll reduce the liquid down till it caramelizes. Some of those milk sugars caramelize. And then I'm going to add a little bit of water to it, and then add my whole chicken to that. We're going to do the same thing with the pork. Now, if you're using like pork shoulder and they're larger pieces, you might want to let this go for another 30 minutes at this stage, because that's going to take a little bit longer to braise. Okay? So the pork is done. You can see that it's nice and tender. And look at how that all evaporated. Now I'm going to put this back in the oven, and I want that to caramelize just a little bit more. I turned up my oven to 450 because I want to get some really good color on this meat, almost like a carnitas. Not as much fat in here because the pork I used wasn't as fatty. But we're going to put that back in, let that caramelize a little bit more. Now the chicken I took out because it was tender, and then I just reduced it a little bit, and there's still a little bit of liquid left. So I'm going to put the chicken back in, put it back in the oven, and let that caramelize just like the pork also. Okay, so the pork is done. I took the bone out, came right off. You can see how that meat caramelized and that milk caramelized on the bottom. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a little bit of water just to create a little moisture, and I want to loosen up some of that fond that's developing that developed on the bottom, and I'm also just going to kind of break that pork up a little bit. You don't have to add the juice back in, but I want it a little bit more moist for the sandwich. I don't want it too wet because it's going to make the sandwich wet. Okay. The chicken is almost done. And again, just kind of break it up lightly. I don't want it to be shredded. Kind of scrape up some of that fond. The onions just really broke down. The garlic, orange zest, everything just kind of broke down in here. Look at that. Oh yeah, that's going to make a good sandwich. And then you can taste it for a little bit of salt. Okay, the chicken is getting there. Got a few more minutes in the oven. I'm going to turn that chicken. I did reduce that liquid down, like I said. Okay, and I'm just going to, again, let that kind of brown and caramelize. Okay, so my chicken is done. Nice and brown. I'm going to pull that out. And just be careful with some of the sides of the pot that, you know, they're going to get a little dark as you put that back in the oven. Now I'm going to let this chicken rest. Make sure you take your bay leaves out. Okay. And then I'm going to just lightly take the thigh bone out and the hip bone if there's a hip bone in there. Now I'm going to do the same thing with the pork. Okay, so my chicken is done. I put that back in with the juice. Just watch out for the sides. You don't want to get any of that in there. And I left it in some nice chunks. And I don't want it really any more wet than that because it's going to make the sandwich hard to eat. All right, well, let's make our sandwich. So these are the Torta rolls. Look how beautiful that is. And this is going to be a nice sandwich. I don't know if I'll be able to finish this. I might need some help. Beautiful rolls. Now, I'm using non-fat Greek yogurt. All right? Say what you will. I'm just going to cut down on some of the fat. You can use sour cream, low-fat sour cream, Mexican crema. Okay? And that's going to help to kind of form a barrier so that the bun doesn't get soggy. You might see in traditional tortas, you might see refried beans. You might see mayonnaise, depending on the type of torta. Okay. Now we're going to add some of our pork or chicken, whichever one you want. You can even do both. I'm going to add a little pork too. Look how beautiful that pork is. All right. Okay. Now we're going to add some pico de gallo. So the recipe is 2 plum tomatoes, small diced, juice of 1 to 2 limes, 1 jalapeno, minced. If you want to seed it, you can. A 1/4 cup of rinsed red onion, or you can use Spanish white onion or yellow onion, but I did small dice them and rinse them, and then a 1/4 cup of cilantro. There's some sliced avocado, some shredded cabbage, really fine. You want to get that really nice and fine. You can use even like lettuce, iceberg lettuce. And I love cilantro, so we're going to hit that with a bunch of really just rough cut cilantro, a couple tablespoons. Look at that. All right, let's see what it looks like on the inside. Normally this would be wrapped in paper, parchment, and this is a pretty much street food. So you can see how that bun, the way it's flat, how it just makes for a great sandwich. It's not too big, it's not too high. Look at that. I know what I'm having for dinner. Have a good night.